A method is a set of steps to arrive at a destination or a result. We could maybe even call it a recipe. We have ways we do things with the intent of getting a certain result. When we do these well and the method is correct, we should get the desired result. Let's review the methods of our life in a different light today. We're going to go to Proverbs 14, 11 through 14. And I hid that from myself, so give me 1 second while I get square here. Yes, Proverbs 14, 11 through 14. And let's read that. It says, "The house of the wicked shall be overthrown, but the tent of the upright will flourish. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Even in laughter the heart may sorrow, and the end of myrrh may be grief. The backslider in heart will be filled with his own ways, but a good man will be satisfied from above." Now, what does all that mean? So let's kind of figure it out. When we talk about methods, we talk about our recipe for life, or the things that we're going to do and how we live our life. There's a way that seems right to us, and that's what it says here in Proverbs in verse 12, that there's a way that seems right to a man. This makes sense to me. It's common sense. It's how I've always done it, or it's what I was taught. It feels right. It seems right, and I've frequently said, it's like the Nike commercials that they used to have, where they said, if it feels good, do it. So you're running on emotion essentially. But there's a way that right seems right to a man, but the Bible tells us this: it's the end of its way of death. In other words, the way that seems right to a man ends in death. And why is that? Well, there's a couple of different things I want to look at. Verse 14 says, "The backslider in his heart will be filled with his own ways." He'll be filled with his own ways. But a good man will be satisfied from above. So it comes down to this. When I do what seems right to me, it's all about me, right? It's about my feelings, how I feel about things. I feel like you should, say this, or I feel like you should think that, or I feel like you should behave this way or that way, or I feel like I can do this or I can do that, or the rules don't apply to me the same as they apply to you, etc. There's a way that seems right to a man, but the end of it is death, or one translation is sudden destruction. But there's an end that is not going to satisfy anyone about anything, and it's because we're just following what seems right and feels right to me. And it's very self-centered. It's what feels right to me. And it says the backslider in his heart will always be filled with his own ways. He'll always be filled with, I'll just do it my way. I'll do it my way. That's the song. I'll do it my way. He did it my way, whatever. It doesn't get us where we need to be. It simply gets us full of ourselves. And being full of yourself is a very lonely existence, right? You're living for yourself. You're living for your satisfaction, your gratification of the moment, etc. And you're constantly frustrated by people not doing their part to make you happy, or whatever it might be, or your circumstances don't make you happy. So there's all kinds of things that don't work when you're just chasing your own feel-goodism or your own idea of how things should be. And part of that is because things are not always what they seem to be. They're not always the way we want it to work out. And it says in verse 13, "Even in laughter the heart may sorrow." Ugh. That means that our emotions can swing widely and not always make sense. Sometimes they don't make any sense at all, okay? So even when it's, we're in laughter, all of a sudden there's sorrow in the midst of all that. And the reverse can be true. You can find laughter in a sorrowful situation, and then you feel bad because you shouldn't have been laughing or whatever. And that can not be good. And the end of mirth may be grief. In other words, the end of joy may be sadness kind of thing, or deep sadness. And it's because, again, the backslider in his heart will be filled with his own ways, because it's all about me. And this generation that we're living in right now just seems like that's it. Like it's all about me all the time. They don't, or we don't. I don't want to put it all on a younger generation or different generation. I mean, I'm part of the people walking around on the planet now too, right? So it comes down to being full of ourselves doesn't work. And in the grand scope of life, it doesn't work if my focus is just on me and my happiness, and that's all that matters. I need to be happy. I can't deal with anything else. I have to be happy. But the problem with that is it's short-lived. My happiness becomes tied then to things that are happening, that becomes tied to money, or tied to my job or status, or that my steak was cooked correctly, or whatever it might be, instead of having our sights on higher things, on godly things, on being more like Christ. That's what we really want to be, as more like Christ as a Christian, all right? But it says here, a good man will be satisfied from above. A good man will be satisfied by God. He'll be satisfied by the things that God provides, both in terms of just stuff, right? God provides provisions and things, but also it's the attitude that I'll be satisfied because of what God has done, because what God provides, and I won't be looking for more than that. There's nothing wrong with more, right? There's nothing wrong with God blessing you and you having more than you had before, that kind of thing at all. But if my happiness is tied to I need more and more and more and more, everything that people get addicted to, whether it be drugs, pornography, food, adrenaline, whatever it is, you always want more. Whatever you had today isn't enough. You need more for tomorrow, kind of thing. But it says a good man will be satisfied from above. He'll be satisfied with what God provides. He'll be thankful to God for what is being provided, right? And it goes on, if he wants to flourish, in verse 11, the house of the wicked will be overthrown, but the tent of the upright will flourish. The tent of the upright will flourish. In other words, when our intent and our desire is for what God has in store, what God wants to do, when we're looking to God as our sufficiency, God as our source, then we can flourish in that, because God will bless us. Not because I say, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and that's what's going to get me a blessing. No, God will bless us when we are faithful stewards over what He gives us. We can get more from God when we handle what God gives us with responsibility and without the attitude of I need more, more, more. Right? So it says the upright, and the man who is in line with God, the one who's walking with God, the one who's in right relationship with God, the one who's forgiven, has accepted salvation, is walking with God. You're in your prayer life and you're communing with God, and you're walking with God. You're in line with God, and He's going to direct your paths. And so that's going to keep you as an upright man. That's going to bring you to that point of flourishing. And it's because we come into the realization that it's not about me and how good or not I am, but it's His righteousness. And when I accept His righteousness, then I can be in line with God. Not I can be in line with I'm going to flourish. That my motivation is flourish. No, my motivation is being right with God, in a right relationship with God, being upright in my relationship with God. His righteousness, relying on His realizing it's not how good I am, it's what He did. And I accept that and have a right relationship with Christ. I am restored to a relationship with God. That's where my uprightness and my righteousness come. It's absent pride. In other words, it doesn't have pride, because pride goes before a fall. Pride is when I puff myself up. Pride goes to, Satan in heaven. I will be like God. And it goes to the original sin when, Eve partook of the forbidden fruit and gave to Adam as well, because somehow she was going to be like God if she ate this fruit and broke God's commandment regarding it, because the enemy convinced her that God didn't want what was best for her. And so you may be listening to me talk and thinking, well, that's all well and good, but I want to flourish and I don't want to be satisfied with just whatever God provides. I've seen so many people scraping by in 2 nickels or whatever. That's not it. God will bless you, but God will bless you in ways beyond money. God will bless you with things way beyond stuff. But we have to set aside our pride, get in right relationship with him, and recognize that it's not what I do as much as it is what he's done that really makes the difference. My part is to get in alignment and get in line with God, okay? And we can look at this, we're kind of working it out. It's what I put in my notes here, but Philippians 2, verses 12 and 13, I want to go there for a second. This is verses that you're pretty familiar with, I'm sure. But Philippians 2 and 12 and 13 says, "Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but how much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure." Now, what does all that mean? Here's what it means. So, the working it out with God, so working out our own salvation, that doesn't imply that I'm going to create my own religion. It doesn't imply that I'm going to work out something with God that's unique to me as far as the rules apply to everybody else, but I have this exemption from God for these things over here because I don't want to do those anyway. That's not it. Working out your own salvation with God is working through the things that are troublesome, working through the things that trip you up, working through the things that are not of God, and getting to that place where I want God's will, I want God's way in my life, because I recognize that God wants what's best for me. He died for my sins so that I could have a right relationship with him, and I could be blessed and flourish and do well when I'm in line with him, okay? Doesn't mean your life is always going to be, quote unquote, a bed of roses, but what it means is that you'll always have God to rely on, and so your happiness won't be coming from happenings, but it will be coming from the peace of God, the love of God, the strength of God, the protection of God, the relationship with God. It will be coming from those things, and I can be grounded, and no matter what happens, I can be set and satisfied because I'm looking to God as my source, okay? And and start working this out. Oswald Chambers had a quote that relates to this. There's the public me. That's the one that people see at church, right? That's the one that, I tell people how good I am. And, that's the prideful one. So that's where I need to fix that, right? I need to make sure that that's not an act, that that's the real me in real relationship with God, the public me, what the public sees. But then there's the private me. And what Oswald Chambers said is that my worth to God in public is who I am in private. So if who I am in private is a different person than who I am in public from a Christian perspective, then my value to God is very little, right? If behind closed doors I'm not a good person, I'm not in right relationship with God, then there's no value to God for me in public, because we both know it's not the true me. It's not the real thing. It's an act, okay? I need to work out the public me so that that's real. and then I need to let God work on the private me, and I need to get my act together in private. So it does no good if we talk about a great prayer life. Oh, I've been praying for you for the last 6 months, and I've been doing this and I've been doing that. If I'm not actually doing any of that, it just makes me a liar. I need to be able to say, God, I'm praying for so-and-so. I do that in private, and I spend time in prayer in private. That makes my value to God in public more. And that's one of the places God can allow us to flourish, is when we're faithful in the small things, then he can give us bigger things. And if our motivation isn't the things, but the relationship with God, that's how it'll play out. Is that we'll be blessed because we have a true and honest relationship with God, and we're truly letting him impact our private life, which spills over into our public, instead of the public life is just a farce or an act. Okay. It says to work out my faith with fear and trembling. It says to work it out. Well, this is the idea of the word finish or accomplish or perform. So if we look at it, it says work out your faith with fear and trembling. It says finish your faith with fear and trembling, or accomplish your faith with fear and trembling. And I think I'm substituting here. Give me 1 second so I don't tell you the wrong thing here. It helps if I get in the right spot. Sorry. So it says it says work out your own salvation. I was saying faith. They're very related. But if my salvation is to be finished, if I'm going to finish my salvation with fear and trembling, with respect and honor and reverence, that's what I need to do. I need to let that finishing work happen. Or the Bible oftentimes uses the word perfect or perfected, and when it talks about finished, let it be brought to conclusion, and a correct conclusion. My salvation becomes set and right because I'm working that out. That process is going on with fear and trembling, with reverence for God, not frightful, crying, afraid, running, screaming, but with respect. Okay, with respect. And the other word it can be used is accomplish, so that I can accomplish my salvation. I can reach that point, that process. My desired result can come when I work that out with respect for God, and I work through it. I accomplish it with God, letting him be in charge of things. Or perform, when let my salvation be the performance of my salvation, how it actually is. That's not performance like fake, but performance like do, right? Get it done. When I perform my salvation, when I perform my walk with God, it's a real thing, and I work out the recipe for life, for salvation and relationship with God, and it's real, then it impacts my public life. So when I work out my salvation, when I work out the method, when I get my methods right, how I'm going to live life, how I'm going to put God first, all of those things, that's when it all comes into order. Salvation is a relationship with the deliverer or the savior. That's what salvation is. So when I finish my relationship with the deliverer, when I accomplish my relationship with the deliverer, when I perform my relationship with the deliverer, when all of those things happen with proper respect and concern for doing what's right, when I do all of that, that's when my path is straight. That's when I'm going to be able to flourish. That's when I've gotten myself out of the way. And again, it's not my holiness. It's not my performance. It's my completion. It is my working it out or finishing. It's like, I don't know if you've ever finished concrete. It's a difficult job, but you got this thing that's going to become a solid, but it's currently a kind of a soupy mess, and you're trying to smooth it out and level it out and make sure it doesn't have a bunch of things going on and wrong with it and stuff. You're finishing it off and getting it worked out so that it's the surface you want, its smoothness that you want, and the levelness that you want before it sets up. And it's kind of that thing when we talk about, our series here, New, and this is a lesson entitled Method. When I get my new method, my new recipe, my new process, my new way I'm going to deal with things worked out with God, my salvation, and I recognize it's not my holiness, it's not my performance, it's my acceptance of what God's already done. It's about relationship with God and putting my life in his hands instead of me trying to dictate everything all the time. So, as we kind of start to wrap things up here a little bit, if you're a thinking man, you're an intellectual, they have some of the hardest times with salvation and Christianity and those things because they have convinced themselves that they're right about things and there might not even be a God or whatever it is they've worked out. But if you're a thinking man, you have to think that you want to have a relationship with the creator of the universe. And if you cannot see that God created the universe, if you can't get past Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God, and you can't recognize that there is a God, and you're just being blind to what is really obvious facts, and it's hard to call yourself a thinking man. Wisdom begins with a fear of the Lord or a understanding of God. It's not. You can't be wise without that. Okay, and then if you're a thinking man, you need to think about giving your heart to God and letting him work through you and do things with you, and let him change the things about you that are not godly, holy, and right. Okay, and then the second piece is trusting God. I need to trust God, and I've been talking about that a lot the last several weeks. But trusting in God, putting your trust in God, not letting fear creep in, not letting doubt creep in, not letting all of these things, rule you, but instead trust God. And when things happen, when I doubt, when I fear, when I have these things coming at me, I need to go in prayer to God and say, God, I'm putting this in your hands, maybe yet again, but I'm putting it in your hands, God. Give me your peace, give me an assurance, God, that you've got this, and keep coming back to him. And no matter what, I'm going to praise you, God. No matter what, I'm going to thank you for what you're doing. I'm going to praise you for what you're doing. And we could do, and I've talked about it in the past, but we could do a whole series on just that attitude. And then realizing your destination. My destination is heaven. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm going to heaven. I'm going to spend eternity with my heavenly Father. And I need to have a relationship with him. I need to know him and him know me, and we build this relationship. The Bible talks about, depart from me, I never knew you. That's not what I want to hear. I want to hear, welcome in, thou good and faithful servant. Someone I already know, someone I have a relationship with. That's my hope. So if I want to have a new method, a new way of doing things, I need to be a thinking man and think on godly things. I need to be a trusting man, and I need to trust God in all things. And I need to remember my destination, my final home is in heaven with God, and I need to put him first and put my trust in him first and have my thoughts be on God and his kingdom, the godly things, and trusting in God. And then I can have peace. He says he'll help me flourish and he'll make my path straight. That's the method or the recipe for success. And it may sound simple, but I got to tell you, a lot of this Christian walk really isn't difficult. It's simple. If we can get our brain that causes us to overthink out of the way, and we can put our thoughts on God, our trust in God, and remember our destination is our permanent relationship with God. And that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.